You wake up, and before your mind even has a chance to settle, it begins. The phone lights up, notifications flood in. That quiet background anxiety is already waiting for you before you've even stepped out of bed. Before your first word, before your feet touch the floor, the world is already pulling at your attention, demanding something from you, filling your head with noise before you've had a single moment of peace. Most people call this a normal morning. The Stoics would call it giving away control. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal before sunrise, a reason Seneca used the early hours of the day to write his deepest thoughts. These men weren't only battling problems out in the world, they were battling something much closer, the chaos inside the human mind. Seneca once said that the first hour of the day shapes the rest of it, and that's what this video is about. 8 timeless practices, ancient ideas that still work today, not trendy morning hacks, not fake productivity routines designed to make you feel busy. These are disciplines that change the way you enter each day before the noise reaches you, before responsibilities pile up, before you forget who you truly are beneath all the pressure and distraction. If you're serious about taking back your mornings, comment, "I own my morning." Let's see who's truly committed. Because your morning isn't just preparation for the day, it is the day, and it starts now. Here's the truth nobody talks about when it comes to morning routines. They usually don't fail because you're lazy. They don't fail because you picked the wrong habit tracker or downloaded the wrong app. They fail because they're built on the wrong foundation from the beginning. Most morning routines are obsessed with productivity, doing more, moving faster, squeezing more output from every hour. And that's exactly the problem. You cannot optimize your way into a meaningful life. Think about how most mornings begin. The alarm rings. Maybe you hit snooze once, maybe several times. Then, almost automatically, you grab your phone before you've even taken one intentional breath. Within minutes, you're scrolling through other people's lives, absorbing bad news you can't control, carrying stress and anxiety that never belonged to you in the first place. By the time you're dressed and caffeinated, your clearest mental hours are already gone, spent consuming instead of thinking. The Stoics had a name for this kind of existence, a lack of self-discipline, a life controlled by impulse instead of intention. And they believed this was one of the greatest dangers to living well. Some dramatic collapse, just the slow loss of control day after day, through hundreds of tiny moments where you surrender your attention without even noticing. What most morning routines are missing isn't another habit, it's philosophy, a deeper framework, a set of questions you ask yourself before the world starts asking things of you. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal and train his mind each morning because it was trendy or optimized. He did it because he understood something most people never realize. An unguarded mind naturally drifts toward fear, distraction, negativity, and complaint. Every morning when you wake up, your mind is reset in a very real way, not just metaphorically, neurologically. In those early quiet hours, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, self-control, and clarity is at its strongest before the mental weight of the day starts piling up. The Stoics didn't know modern neuroscience, but they understood the reality of human nature. Morning is powerful. It's the moment when your mind is most open, most influenceable, and most capable of choosing who you will become for the rest of the day. And yet, most people spend that powerful time completely on autopilot. These next 8 practices are not about adding more pressure to your mornings. They're about taking your mornings back, turning that first hour from something unconscious and chaotic into something intentional, something meaningful. And it all begins with the very first moment you open your eyes. Practice 1. Wake with intention. Marcus Aurelius wasn't the kind of person who jumped out of bed excited every morning. In his writings, he admitted that he often felt the temptation to stay under the blankets, to avoid the discomfort of the day ahead, to remain still and comfortable. But then he would ask himself a simple question: what am I getting up for? Not as motivation, as philosophy. Because once you can answer that question, clearly and honestly, something changes. Your body begins to follow where your mind has already decided to go. Waking with intention means choosing what this day is about before the world chooses for you. And maybe you decide the night before, maybe you decide in those first quiet seconds after waking up. But either way, you choose, not your entire future, not your 5-year goals, just this one day. What is this day for? What do you want to practice? What kind of person do you want to become today? That's very different from a normal to-do list. A to-do list is about completing tasks. Intention is about shaping character. There's a huge difference between saying, I need to answer emails today, and saying, today I will practice patience with difficult people. One is about productivity, the other is about who you are becoming. Epictetus believed that life can be divided into 2 parts, things we can control and things we cannot. Your intentions belong completely to the first category. You may not control how the day unfolds, but you absolutely control the mindset, focus, and character you bring into it. Every single morning gives you that choice again. So try this tomorrow before touching your phone, before checking notifications, before letting the outside world rush into your mind. Pause and ask yourself, who do I want to be today? Not in some dramatic or unrealistic way. Keep it simple. Keep it real. Maybe today you want to become someone who listens more carefully instead of interrupting. Maybe you want to stop avoiding the difficult task and simply do it. Maybe your goal is just to be fully present with the people around you instead of distracted all day. And if possible, say your intention out loud. There's power in hearing your own voice commit to something. It makes the choice feel real. The Stoics called this prohairesis, the conscious decision to choose your attitude and direction in life. And that decision begins the moment you refuse to let your morning run on default. You are not simply waking up, you are waking up as someone. The real question is, who? Answer that first, and the rest of your morning becomes much clearer. Practice. 2. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. Yes, it sounds uncomfortable, that's the point. Memento mori is a Latin phrase that means, remember you are mortal. Not to make you fearful, not to ruin your morning with dark thoughts, but to remind you of something incredibly important. Your time is limited. And that truth has the power to clarify everything. The Stoics reflected on death often, not because they were negative people, but because they understood something most of us try very hard to avoid. The fact that life ends is exactly what gives life meaning. Without limits, time loses value. Mortality is what forces us to notice how precious an ordinary day really is. Seneca once wrote, "Live as though you have reached the end of life." He wasn't encouraging hopelessness, he was encouraging clarity, because when you genuinely remember that your mornings are numbered, small things stop controlling you so easily. The trivial begins to lose its grip, and what truly matters suddenly feels impossible to ignore. Think about how much mental energy disappears every morning over things that barely matter. Traffic, notifications, someone's opinion of you, an awkward conversation from days ago, tiny frustrations that quietly steal your peace. Now place those worries beside one simple truth. You only have a limited number of mornings left in your life. Suddenly, so many things that felt urgent begin to look small, and the things that truly matter become impossible to postpone. Not unlimited, not guaranteed, a limited number, and the moment you truly understand that, so many unimportant things suddenly lose their power over you. This isn't about becoming afraid of death, it's about finally learning how to live because of it. There's a huge difference between the two. Fear of death makes people smaller. Awareness of death makes people clearer, wiser, and more alive. It sharpens your understanding of what truly matters. It deepens your gratitude for ordinary moments, and it cuts through unnecessary noise with incredible precision. In ancient Rome, victorious generals would ride through the streets after battle, while a servant stood beside them whispering, "Memento mori," remember that you will die. Even at the height of success, They were reminded not to lose perspective, to remember that life is temporary for everyone. You don't need someone whispering in your ear every morning. You only need 30 quiet seconds. 30 seconds to remember that this day is not promised, that the people you love will not be here forever, and neither will you. Then from that honest realization, ask yourself a simple question. What deserves my time today? You'll be surprised how clear the answer becomes. Practice. 3. Defining one purpose for the day. There's a kind of tiredness that sleep can't fix. It comes from spending an entire day moving constantly but never feeling connected to what you're doing. Being busy, yet empty. Doing dozens of things, yet ending the day feeling like nothing meaningful happened. The Stoics warned about this kind of life. They believed many people confuse movement with meaning, and honestly, this has become one of the biggest problems in modern life. People stay occupied every minute of the day, but very few stop to ask, what is all this activity actually for? The solution is simple, but it requires discipline. Every morning, choose one purpose that becomes the center of your day, not 10 priorities, not an endless checklist, just one clear focus. Something you can return to whenever distractions pull you away from what matters. This is different from the first practice. Earlier, you asked, who do I want to be today? Now you ask, what is this day truly about? What gives this day meaning beneath all the noise? For Marcus Aurelius, the answer was often simple. Service. Serving his people. Serving justice. Serving his responsibilities with wisdom. His position was enormous, but his guiding purpose remained clear. And that clarity made decisions easier. Your purpose doesn't need to sound dramatic or impressive. Actually, the simpler and more specific it is, the more powerful it becomes. To complete this work with full focus is stronger than saying, I want to be productive. To truly listen to my family tonight is more meaningful than saying, I want to be a better parent. Specificity turns intention into action. Epictetus taught that living with virtue isn't some distant goal you eventually arrive at. It's something practiced daily, choice by choice, moment by moment. And your daily purpose is where that practice begins. It's your way of saying, through all the distractions and pressure, this is what matters most today. Try this simple exercise tomorrow morning. Before the day begins, write one sentence, only one. Complete this phrase. Today is for... That's it. Then place it somewhere visible. Your desk, your mirror, your phone wallpaper, anywhere you'll see it throughout the day, because eventually the day will become chaotic. Things will go off track. People will interrupt your focus. But when that happens, you can return to that one sentence. It may not solve every problem, but it will remind you where you're headed, and direction matters more than speed. The Stoics understood that deeply. Practice. 4. Voluntary discomfort. Every morning presents a choice, comfort or strength. Most people automatically choose comfort. The Stoics chose something different. On purpose. They practiced voluntary discomfort, intentionally doing difficult things, even when easier options existed. Not because suffering itself is valuable, but because a life built entirely around comfort slowly weakens the mind, and the Stoics valued inner freedom above everything else. Seneca practiced this regularly. Sometimes he would eat the simplest food, wear rough clothing, or live with very little for short periods of time, not to punish himself, but to train himself, to prove that he could handle discomfort without falling apart. He once wrote, "Set aside a few days where you are satisfied with the simplest food and rough clothing." The goal wasn't misery, the goal was freedom from fear, freedom from becoming dependent on comfort for peace of mind, because real strength comes from realizing, I can handle more than I think. Today, voluntary discomfort can look different for everyone. Maybe it's taking a cold shower, not because cold water magically changes your life, but because willingly facing discomfort strengthens your ability to handle pressure. Maybe it's sitting quietly without your phone for 15 minutes. while every impulse tells you to reach for distraction. Maybe it's skipping the automatic habits you depend on every morning just to remind yourself that you control your desires, they don't control you. The specific challenge doesn't matter as much as the choice itself. What matters is willingly choosing difficulty before life forces difficulty upon you. Modern psychology supports this idea too. Researchers call it stress inoculation. When you repeatedly face small challenges voluntarily, your mind becomes more resilient in larger stressful situations. You develop emotional endurance. The Stoics didn't know modern neuroscience, but they understood the result. Small moments of chosen hardship prepare you for unavoidable hardship later in life. You don't need to become extreme. You don't need to suffer constantly. You only need to practice doing one difficult thing consistently. That's how resilience is built. Practice. 5. Journaling as self-examination. Most people don't realize this, but Marcus Aurelius never intended for his writings to become famous. His meditations were private. They were personal reflections written only for himself. Honest thoughts, repeated struggles, quiet reminders, a man speaking truthfully to himself about his fears, mistakes, weaknesses, and values. One of the most powerful men in history spent part of his mornings examining his own mind in private. That is true Stoic journaling. And it's very different from what most people think journaling is. It's not simply writing down what happened during the day. It's not just listing things you're grateful for, although gratitude can certainly be part of it. At its core, Stoic journaling is self-examination. It's asking yourself difficult questions honestly enough that you can no longer avoid the answers. Questions like, where did I lose control yesterday? What truth am I avoiding? Did I act according to my values, or did I drift through the day unconsciously? Epictetus believed that people who never examine themselves continue repeating the same mistakes over and over, the same fears, the same excuses, the same destructive habits, and often they don't even realize it. Writing forces honesty, because once something is written clearly in front of you, it becomes harder to deny. Thoughts can be ignored. Words on a page stay there. And that's where accountability begins. You don't need an hour. You don't need perfect writing. Even 5 quiet minutes is enough. Try asking yourself 3 simple questions. What do I want to practice today? What's honestly bothering me right now? Where am I avoiding responsibility? Then answer without filtering yourself. The goal isn't beautiful writing. The goal is truth. Over time, something powerful starts happening. Patterns begin to appear. The same fears, the same emotional reactions, the same avoidance. Your journal may not instantly solve these things, but it makes them visible. And you cannot change what you refuse to see. Marcus Aurelius understood that deeply. That's why he returned to the page again and again each morning, to appear wise, but to become more aware of himself. Practice. 6. Read the philosophers. There's a difference between reading words and allowing words to reshape the way you think. When you sit quietly in the morning and read someone like Seneca with full attention, something different happens compared to scrolling through social media or reading headlines. You enter a conversation with a mind that has spent years deeply thinking about life, suffering, purpose, discipline, fear, and human nature. And that kind of wisdom changes you slowly from the inside out. You're not just consuming words, you're allowing yourself to be shaped by them. The Stoics read constantly, but they approached reading differently than most people do today. They didn't read simply to collect information. They read to transform themselves. Seneca said it clearly, collect only the ideas you can truly apply to your life. Not hundreds of quotes, not endless information, just a few truths that become part of who you are. Because the goal was never to know more, the goal was to become wiser. This is the idea behind slow reading. Sometimes one page is enough, sometimes one paragraph. Read until something catches your attention deeply. A sentence, a phrase, an idea that feels different today than it would have yesterday. And when that happens, stop, sit with it. Think about why it affected you. Ask yourself what that idea is asking you to change, notice, or understand more clearly. Morning is the perfect time for this because your mind is still quiet. You haven't yet been flooded by notifications, stress, conversations, or distractions. An idea that reaches you at 6 in the morning enters differently than the same idea at 3 in the afternoon when your mind is tired, reactive, and divided in 10 directions. And it doesn't even have to be Stoic philosophy specifically. Marcus Aurelius studied Greek thinkers. Seneca often read philosophers he disagreed with because even challenging ideas could sharpen the mind. The Stoics believed wisdom required openness, not intellectual comfort. What matters is that what you read pushes you toward deeper thinking, better living, and greater self-awareness. Protect the quality of what enters your mind first thing in the morning. It's your mind's first meal of the day. Even 5 or 10 minutes is enough. You're not trying to finish books quickly. You're searching for one meaningful thought worth carrying into the rest of your day. One idea that strengthens you, challenges you, or finally puts words to something you've quietly felt for a long time. Seneca once wrote, "Treat each day as if it were a complete life." Imagine beginning each of those lives beside someone who has already spent years deeply thinking about how to live wisely. That's what this practice really offers. Not information, guidance, a quiet form of companionship in the search for wisdom. Practice. 7. Negative visualization. This may be the most misunderstood practice in Stoicism because the name sounds negative. It sounds pessimistic, like you're training yourself to expect disaster all the time. But the truth is almost the opposite. Negative visualization is simply the practice of calmly preparing yourself for the reality that not everything will go smoothly today. Not to become fearful, not to attract bad outcomes, but so you aren't emotionally destroyed when difficulties inevitably appear. Because something will go wrong today, maybe not dramatically, maybe not catastrophically, but there will be inconvenience, disappointment, delay, conflict, unexpected problems. That's part of life. The real question is, will you meet those moments prepared or completely caught off guard? The Stoics believed much of human suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the gap between what we expected and what actually happened. The bigger the gap, the stronger the emotional reaction. Negative visualization helps narrow that gap, not by becoming hopeless, but by becoming realistic. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He reminded himself that he would meet difficult people, impatient people, dishonest people, selfish people, not because he hated humanity, but because preparing for those realities helped him stay calm instead of shocked and angry when they appeared. Here's how you practice it. Take a few quiet minutes in the morning and mentally walk through your day ahead. Think honestly about where difficulties might arise. A stressful conversation, a frustrating commute, a difficult task you've been avoiding, a moment where your patience or discipline may be tested. Don't exaggerate things, don't spiral into anxiety. Just calmly acknowledge that the day may not unfold perfectly. Then ask yourself, if this happens, how do I want to respond? That question changes everything. Not, how do I stop bad things from happening? Not, what if everything goes wrong? But who do I want to be when difficulty arrives? Because that is something you actually control. Epictetus explained this very directly. The person practicing negative visualization is not rehearsing disaster. They are rehearsing strength, preparing themselves emotionally before the challenge arrives. That isn't pessimism, that's readiness. And over time, that readiness becomes a deeper and more reliable form of optimism, not blind positivity, but confidence built through resilience. Practice 8. Gratitude without illusion. Gratitude is one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern self-improvement culture. Today, it's often reduced to motivational quotes, forced positivity, or quick journal exercises that people rush through without really feeling anything. But Stoic gratitude was much deeper than that. It wasn't about pretending life is perfect. And it wasn't about forcing yourself to feel grateful every second. Stoic gratitude was the practice of paying full attention to what already exists in your life before habit makes you stop noticing it. Seneca wrote, "Do not ruin what you already have by constantly wanting what you don't." Think carefully about that. Many of the things you currently take for granted were once things you desperately hoped for. Your health, your home, the people you love, the opportunities you have, even the simple fact that you woke up this morning with another chance to choose how you live. At one point in your life, these things would have felt extraordinary to you. But familiarity makes human beings blind. We adapt quickly, and eventually what was once deeply appreciated becomes invisible. Stoic gratitude is the practice of making those things visible again, and that's why Marcus Aurelius regularly wrote about the people who shaped his life, the teachers, mentors, friends, and family who helped him become who he was, not as sentimental writing, but as an act of honesty. He understood how quickly the human mind stops appreciating what it sees every day. This practice doesn't require fancy journals or long routines. It simply requires attention. Every morning, ask yourself one quiet question. What in my life would deeply hurt me if it disappeared tomorrow? Then pause long enough to realize it's still here, not 10 things, just one, but feel it fully. Because when gratitude becomes real instead of automatic, ordinary life begins to feel extraordinary again, not just saying, "I'm grateful for my family," as a routine sentence repeated without feeling, but pausing long enough to truly think about one specific person, to recognize clearly that their presence in your life is temporary, that one day they will not be here forever, and neither will you. That realization changes gratitude completely. It makes it real. It wakes something inside you that autopilot living usually keeps asleep. And when gratitude is combined with memento mori, the awareness that life is finite, it becomes incredibly powerful because you begin holding two truths at the same time. Life is limited, and your life already contains more beauty, meaning, and value than you usually stop to notice. The result isn't sadness, it's aliveness. A deeper connection to the life you're already living right now, not the imaginary future life you keep waiting for. These are 8 separate practices, but in truth they all point toward the same thing. Each one is simply another way of choosing to live intentionally instead of unconsciously drifting through your days, to take ownership of your mornings instead of surrendering them to distraction and habit. The Stoics were never trying to become perfect human beings. In fact, they distrusted the idea of perfection entirely. What Marcus Aurelius was building during those early morning journal sessions, what Seneca was building in his letters, what Epictetus was teaching his students, was something much more realistic and much more lasting than perfection. They were building practice, and practice is not something you finish. It's something you return to again and again. Some mornings you'll wake up with clarity and purpose. Other mornings you'll forget everything, you'll skip the journaling, you'll lose patience, you'll abandon your intentions halfway through the day. That doesn't mean you've failed. The Stoics struggled too. Marcus Aurelius openly wrote about his impatience, frustrations, weaknesses, and slow progress toward becoming the person he wanted to be. His writings are not proof that he mastered himself perfectly. They are proof that he kept trying. And that's what this philosophy is really inviting you into. Not a flawless morning routine, a committed one. A morning where you pause long enough to practice even one of these ideas where you bring a little more awareness, discipline, honesty, and intention into the rest of your day. You don't need to change everything overnight. Start with one practice, whichever one connected with you most deeply in this video. Begin there. Try it tomorrow morning, then try again the next day, and once it begins to feel natural, slowly add another. The morning is not something to fix, it's something to develop, a skill, a mindset, a way of living, and like every meaningful skill, it grows slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Until one day you suddenly realize you are no longer the same person you used to be. The person waking up today thinks differently, reacts differently, and lives differently than the person you were a year ago. That's what Stoicism truly offers. Not instant happiness, not perfection, but the chance to build a stronger, wiser, more intentional life, one morning at a time. The Stoics never waited for the perfect moment to begin, they simply began. And if you're ready to begin too, comment below, Day 1. And if you want to continue learning how Stoic philosophy can transform the way you think, act, and move through life, subscribe to Stoic Mode and turn on the bell. Every video is another step forward on that path. Thank you for watching.